So what are we going to look at today? Short company synopsis to understand how they are, where they come from, what they're doing. We talk a little bit about the most recent financing round. We check the business update, how the business is doing. We look at the pricing of the shares and the valuation. We list the things that we like about the company and the things that we don't like. And then in the end, we get an idea on how they're doing recently in the news, what is the sentiment about the name, and now we can invest into the name. So let's get started. Company synopsis, very briefly, been founded in 2014, has three main activities. We know Overture, the plane, so the aviation side, but they also working on a number of patents to potentially spin off in the aerospace and defense. We know that they are already working with the US Air Force and some contractors and suppliers in the aerospace and defense sector. So this is already ongoing. Their main product, Overture, is based on two very steady legs, I would say. It's a supersonic aircraft, so very high speed, but has sustainability at its core. So it is designed to run on sustainable fuels. The technology that they are pursuing is what you call without boom, which means that they don't have the same amount of they don't produce the same amount of noise as, for instance, Concorde used to do. Concorde stopped flying in 2003, but it was passing over my house, landing into Heathrow every day. So I know it was a very, very noisy aircraft. It's expected to test fly in 2026, and at the moment it has around 150 employees. So let's look at my notes on this company synopsis. We can call the company, market pioneer. They've been working on this non-boom technology for quite a while. Their product is suitable for civil and military applications, which is good for us as potential investors. They have this concept of speed and environment blended together. It is extremely important. In today's society, you cannot have a plane that is very fast and caters for rich people and makes noise and upset the communities on land. The fact that is technology based on the absence of this boom, which is what happens when you go into when you cross speed of sound, it's that it opens up a greater number of routes. We know for Concorde, for instance, it was limited to trans-oceanic routes, so it would fly from New York to London, but you couldn't fly from New York to Los Angeles. And New York, Los Angeles, just to mention one, is one of the most profitable, lucrative mid-range routes in the world. So to have a technology that can cut the flying time by 50% on such a route is an extremely good perspective for Boom Supersonic. At the moment, the company is pre-revenue. We're going to look now at their latest financing. They put together the money to start a production facility, but of course they will probably need more money to start production. But what we like is that the company has kept quite lean so far, with only 150 employees. I tell you, I look at a lot of companies, 150 employees. You find, sleeping apps, so apps that help you relaxing in your bed, that have the same amount of employees. So we like the fact that it's keeping lean.
Eduardo, I would just like to add one thing for the folks here. If you look at the concept art for the aircraft, it's clear that they've read two things. They read the somewhat famous NASA book called Quieting the Boom, which was published in 2013. Which is NASA puts out books, and people don't know this, but those who want to build companies are wise when they go and read them. And it's very clear that they've read that, and it's also very clear that they are paying very close attention to the work on the X-59 which is the NASA test aircraft. X in front of a NASA platform means experimental. So it's one of the first X planes in 40 years. And so what's very interesting about the Boom is that they're very clearly a pipeline for all the NASA research directly into commercialization. So to me, that's very exciting because what they're doing is they're leveraging the millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that the US government is spending on quiet boom research and directly pulling it into their commercial proposition. And the second thing is on the company synopsis, I looked up the team members and they give me a lot of confidence. These are folks that are ex-NASA, ex-Boeing, ex-Lockheed Martin, et cetera, et cetera. They've been in the game. They understand aerospace at a very deep level. So their technical prowess is good, but they also have people who know how to bring product to market. So that combination is very encouraging to me. So just wanted to add that on the company synopsis part.
Thank you very much, and feel free to jump in as you see fit.
Thanks, Eduardo.
To go into their most recent financing round, it was for 146 million Series C. It was carried out in October 21 and brought the company to a post-money valuation of around 1.3 billion. Just to put it into perspective, the Boeing market cap at the moment is around 100 billion. So we're talking like 1.3% of that. And shareholders include Japan Airlines, 8VC, Y Combinator, Schindler Asset Management, arm of the industrial group in the United States, in Germany, and American Express. We are not shareholders yet. My notes on this is that the round at 146 million was quite big. It shows that they have a good funding capacity. It was done during what I call the market madness in 2021. It was the worst time for valuation. So there could be a risk, it's like a red flag for companies that have raised money at that time, that they could be a little bit high because of what was going on the market. So the 1.3 billion for a company that has no revenue, could be expensive. It's not cheap in itself, but we will investigate on whether it's worth paying this money right now. As I said, just about 1% of Boeing. And we like the capital table. It's a very simple, lean capital table. There are not so many shareholders, and the ones that are there are quite good. So I think there is room here for more partners. I think what we're going to hear in terms of news flow is more technical partners. So big companies in the aerospace business, we're going to come into the capital table. So good time to jump in our opinion.
Yeah, Eduardo, just on that, I want to point out a couple things. One of the things that's very encouraging about that cap table is not only that it's lean, but that if you in general look at it, it's not overly technical yet, which means that there is a significant belief in the business proposition. People are not just investing in technology and hoping that they'll find a market for it, but it's actually kind of in the other way around. In that you see people investing in the business. You see people coming in from the business perspective and assuming that the technology will get there, which is a very good assumption, given that NASA is at a TRL level, technical readiness level 8, with their quiet boom technology. And that's pretty much ready to commercialize.
Yeah.
So just wanted to point that out when in evaluating this. The other thing I also want to point out is that while the post-money valuation might seem a little high, when you compare this to companies like in other companies in aerospace like Orbit Fab or Relativity, it's much more in line. And what's interesting is that their direct revenue opportunities are greater than either of those companies, right? Both of those companies are on 10, 15-year timelines, very heavily based on defense and government contracting, whereas this is really primarily a commercial play, and the revenue is really available as soon as some regulatory hurdles get done and they can start delivering aircraft. So when you look at the comparables, it doesn't seem like an outlier.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much. I agree with that, and I want to say that I like the fact that they sell investment goods to airlines, and so as you say, as soon as there is a product ready, they can start getting the money in. So they are much closer to revenue than a lot of other defense or space companies. A short business update. I just wanted to pull out some data. This is about how much the North America supersonic jet market was worth in 2020. It is projected to go up to 38 billion globally in 2030. What is interesting here is that the supersonic jet market is based on technology that are noisy, and therefore it doesn't embed in the technology of Boom. So these are like two different worlds. One is the supersonic jet market, then comes Boom with his quiet technology that can stretch this market and make it much larger. As the CEO said at the end of August, so a few days back, there are over 600 global routes that could be operated by the airplane. So this is very, very encouraging for the company.
And Eduardo, if I can interrupt you again,
please,
with one brief concept. One of the things, and I started to try to play with my own market analysis of this company to really understand what their total addressable market and eventually and immediately service addressable market is. You might be hearing, those of us in this who look at these type of companies are also looking at companies that may be investigating things like point-to-point travel and point-to-point shipping, which is the concept Blue Origin and some of those guys are going after, where you can go basically you go up in a ballistic flight, the earth turns underneath you, and you can get from New York to Paris in a couple hours, right? That sounds great, but those rockets are highly carbon emitting, and there's a significantly greater risk. Yeah. So the concept that is suddenly going to start carrying 200 people at a time is 30-40 years out, most likely, whereas this is immediate. And what this technology could do is it could actually make a lot of that less relevant, meaning that passengers will take these flights and point-to-point will be primarily a shipping technology. So when you add that market into it and the possible growth of that market, suddenly you start to see that the market is actually very, very significantly large. The last thing I just want to point out is that this is an enabling technology that will enable new business models. As the size of aircraft scale and different use cases develop. So it's not. So from my perspective, what Boom is not just an investment in the production and revenue. It's not like, hey, this is like a proto Boeing, and we're just going to invest in somebody who's making a cool aircraft. I'm interested in what their IP will represent in terms of licensing for different business models over the next decade. That's also something that's very exciting to me, is that hidden or hard to crystal ball guesstimate market. The upside is really big. It's not without risk, but I think there's a big upside.
Yeah, very good. Still on the business, very quick SWOT analysis on the company, just to focus on what they have and what the risks are. So the strengths are the non-Boom technology that opens more routes, and the sustainability at the core of the project. One weakness that we have identified is that they have not identified an engine manufacturer, and we would like to see that happening before they need to go out and get more cash on the market, because we think that's a critical point we see as potential investors is that it could be difficult to raise money if this engine issue is not solved before then. As an opportunity, I think the growing market it's there, it's growing fast. We have another chart later that shows what's going on the air travel at the moment, and yeah, it's a very strong market. People want to go from A to B as fast as possible. And if you've been anywhere near an airport in the last 6 months after COVID, I'm sure you don't need me to stress this point, because it's been absolute madness for the last 6 months. The threats for the company that we see is that, of course, it's a sector where there are active companies, big companies that could come in the future, and they could, because they already supply the airlines, could, make bundles, and things like that to cut out Boom Supersonic and its technology. So this is one of the threats that we need to keep in mind. Yeah, so let's look at the price of the share that we have found on the secondary market. Let's see what we found on the secondary market. So these are up to here, these are rounds. So the last round, which was here, was made at a share price of 52.74, which is the 1.3, 1.5 post-money valuation that we looked at before. So you see how it has moved. This is a very positive progression. Then we have seen a price here around 15% discount recently from a seller, and that's when we got the idea of investing into the company. So that's where we are at the moment, at just above 40 as a cash price, 40, 45. So it's a 15% move down in the secondary market from the last round, which makes it available at a discount to the last valuation. What is interesting is that this 52.74 here was achieved when most of the planes were grounded and before the American airline order for 20 aircrafts. So we think that if a round came out now, there should be, there should be a premium to the last round. So if you look in 2019, so in 2022, we have a traffic which is 22% lower than 2019. When the aircraft will be operational in 2026, the ACI, so the Airport Council, projects the traffic to be 18% above the 2019 levels. So with this demand projection, with the orders that are coming in from commercial airlines, we've seen United and American Airlines, from defense contractor Northrop Grumman and other companies that started collaborating with Boom. We think that the price will go up at the next round. A very quick like bullet points of what we like and what we don't like about the company. So as we just said, the travel market shows resilience, keeps growing. The non-Boom technology allows to fly over hundreds of routes that were no-go before with the Concorde technology, for instance. We like this positioning with the environment at its core. Everything has to be ESG these days. I know we're going back to coal because we got issues with oil and gas and Russia and the war. But as soon as that issue is done, we can't keep burning fossil fuels forever. So to have a plane that is sustainable at its core is really good point for us. And we wouldn't consider a plane as an investment, a company that didn't make this kind of moves. We also like the fact that the company can spin off space and military application and not just have the aviation business. And definitely what's really, for us bringing our bells is that we have order flow announcements that can keep building up momentum, and it can push up the valuation. We like to have a company in our portfolio where every 3, 4, 5 months there are, good, steady, positive news with big brands buying into it. It's been the case with the SpaceX, where we get positive news with Royal Caribbean, tests with airlines, more satellites up, more things up. It's that kind of mood that we want to invest in. So we like all of this. Of course, like all potential investments, there's a few things we don't like. As we said before, the competition risk is it's big. These are the names of companies that are could potentially come with a supersonic plane, and they're all big companies, well-funded, well-established. Another issue is that we're talking about a very heavily regulated industry. It's not like the internet or what, for instance, crypto used to be before the SEC took charge. There is a little bit of a liquidity risk in the name. What I mean here is that when a name is around 1 billion and has a few shareholders, it's not the most liquid name to buy and sell if we wanted to kind of take a block now and put it back onto the market in 1 or 2 years without waiting for IPO. So we need to consider, we're not talking about the most liquid company. We're not talking about Instacart, for instance, that has 200 shareholders, 30 billion valuation, and way more liquidity. The other issue that we need to consider here is that any incident that would bring loss of human life during the testing, during the operations, would be a substantial threat to the share price. So we need to consider that when we invest. There isn't the possibility to make a huge, have a huge accident, or if you are a crypto company or a app that helps you sleeping or relax, as we were saying before. But in this kind of industrial operation, there is that kind of risk. Time to market. This stretches a little bit beyond our late stage flavor, but we still like it. But we want to make sure that everyone understands that this is not a 24 months time to market. We think they need too much money to be acquired by a SPAC in the next 24 months. This is a steady proof of concept, start production, get the orders in, and IPO play, in our opinion. That's the visibility that we have at the moment. Yeah, so this is the situation of what we don't like. Let's check the sentiment very quickly. Latest news: American Airlines buys 20 Overture jets. Really positive. Lots of resounding in the press. As I said before, Northrop Grumman teams up with Boom. That's news from July. I'm not sure what they're going to do. Maybe Professor Ali has more news on that and is going to update us. Then we have also an investment directly from the US Air Force. This is from January. But as Professor Ali said, there is another indirect participation where Boom Supersonic is able to leverage on the investment that NASA makes, and that's publicly funded. They're able to, to bring into the commercial sector that kind of investment. And so the previous interesting order was from United Airlines for 15 jets in July. We really like these headlines. We think that they are really supportive for share price going forward.
Yep. Without saying too much, sorry, Eduardo, do you want to finish before we jump into the discussion?
Well, I only have one more chart, and then we can open up to go. So, how to get a piece of Boom at the moment? What we're trying to do now, we have a seller. The seller is coming at a 15% discount from latest valuation. So we would like to make a syndicate because we don't have so much cash to buy the seller directly ourselves and put it on our book. It's not a small seller. So we need to put money together in order to be able to bid him in the right size. We're looking at a price of $45 per share and 123 billion of valuation. So the 5% difference between 10 and 15% discount is the cost of transacting, brokerage, lawyers, due diligence, and so on. So these numbers are not set in stone. We could get it cheaper, we could get it a little bit more expensive, but we need to understand who's behind this deal. So of the people who are here, the 10 people who are here today, it would be interesting to know who wants to invest and how much. So we strongly recommend you to make yourself known via the invest form on our website. Yeah, so that's it for the presentation. We can open now for a more open and broad discussion where Professor Ali can also update us on what the company is doing.
Yep, I'm happy to field questions, or if I had a couple points that I wanted to bring up, I can make those whatever the group here feels is best. So not hearing any or seeing any hands, unless you tell me, Eduardo. A couple of things on the Northrop partnership. That's actually very exciting. It's also not unexpected. It was more of a question of who they would end up partnering with from the defense industrial base, rather than when who and when rather than if. And the reason is that the U.S. military has not had a significant follow-up to the SR-71. If you were to Google YF-112, it looks suspiciously like the old Blackbird. So there are a lot of defense use cases that arise, and it's better for Boom to simply license and sell different parts of their IP to a defense integrator rather than necessarily jump into that business themselves, and instead focus on the commercial platforms that they're going to build for the commercial transportation airlines. On that regard, the SPAC discussion has come up, but you can also possibly imagine Boeing, Lockheed, or Northrop making a play for Boom in its entirety within the next 36 months to lock up the IP. So there are different possibilities there in terms of what different ways that an investment could reach an exit or fruition. The other thing was on the engines. It's a very interesting time because it's both a risk, it's both a threat and an opportunity for them. SpaceX faced very similar math or decision points in their early days, when initially they were simply going to try to buy components and assemble a rocket to go to Mars. That's how they really started out thinking. And then they realized that, well, there is no clear, obvious manufacturer for what we want, given our performance requirements, etc. So what they did is they poached teams and vertically integrated. It will be very interesting to see if Boom reaches the same conclusion, or if they end up with a partnership with Pratt & Whitney or Rolls-Royce or GE moving forward. But those folks, in terms of their engine development, had gone a different route in terms of the performance parameter space, and so it is certainly a risk. But at the same time, it's also a tremendous opportunity, because if they end up vertically integrating, they would be the only manufacturer in the world of those types of engines, and it would put them in a position similar to that of Aerojet Rocketdyne, which has a near monopoly on certain types of engines for certain types of launch profiles, particularly for defense. So those were a couple points I just wanted to make, both on the risk and the possible upside.
It's very interesting, the fact that what is a risk could turn into an opportunity, and you have mentioned the story of SpaceX, which actually turned into to be a beneficial part of their development, not the fact that they did their own engines. We have a question for Jamie. Jamie, please go ahead.
I've got a couple of questions on the deal and one on the competitive landscape. How much stock is available for purchase from this seller, and what's the scale of their capital requirements over the next 3 years, and has there been any talk of an IPO? And as far as the competitive landscape is concerned, does anyone know anything about where hypersonic travel has got to?
I just answered the first two questions, which are actually easier than the one I leave to you, Zahir. So in terms of the size of the seller, we would need to put together at least $1 million. That's the minimum to trade with this individual. And in terms of funding plans, no, I don't have visibility. The moment I once I've gauged demand and I know that I can go, I will sign an NDA and get more information from the company. But at the moment, because I'm not sure whether I can get to 1 million, I don't want to burn my bridges by signing an NDA and then having to say, no, sorry, I don't invest because I don't like the colors of your airplane. So yeah, we will have more information if we see that we can put together the correct size.
Thank you. And is $1 million the minimum that we can put in for, or is that the maximum he has to sell?
No, that is the minimum. He's selling a little bit more, but he's selling 1 million clip.
Okay, thanks.
Jamie, what was your question on the competitive landscape again? Could you repeat it, please?
I was just wondering. I mean, I don't know if anyone other than Reaction Engines is particularly working on hypersonic travel and how much of a threat that might be to this.
Yeah, and even Reaction Engines is very defense focused, is my sense, because hypersonics are a critical defense capability. So what has happened is that in many ways, some of these companies have focused on the defense use case, whereas not, and so hypersonics as a class, quiet boom is a subsection of that, right? And quiet boom over land is kind of even another subsection of quiet boom overall. So when you think about the competitive landscape, right, Reaction Engines is not necessarily a direct competitor because they're focused on enabling technology, not necessarily quiet boom design, which has more to do with the airframe than necessarily the engines. But what it will be interesting is if Boom ends up in an exclusive partnership with the Northrop or a Lockheed, does Boeing then try to throw some research at this, poach NASA people and try to build up a program? But either way, what's going to happen is that there are going to be patents involved and so on. So the fact that Boom has been able to accelerate is going to give them advantage. The dark horse is always the Chinese government, but I guarantee you, you're not going to see Chinese aircraft flying over, coast to coast in the U.S. or from London to Paris. That's not going to happen. It's too big of a national security risk, and we don't trust their quality controls, etc. So there might be some cannibalization in certain markets, Africa, Southeast Asia, if they are able to conduct the relevant industrial espionage that they have successfully in other industries. So that's kind of always there. But at the same time, the fact that to make a bad pun, that Boom has accelerated at the level that they have gives them a very significant advantage in the competitive landscape. And I expect somebody to make a play to either acquire or directly license and partner before necessarily spinning up their own research and development program, just because in this industry that's so intense, it's so risky and can take such a long time that if I'm sitting there as a shareholder of Boeing, I'm like, why don't you just go buy this stuff and get on with it and accelerate 10 years forward, that rather than trying to spin up your own research program. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's one of the very possible exits that this company presents is M&A. You could end up with getting shares of a listed company in the not too distant future. So
I think it's a good case. It would be good to know if we have the the shoulders to go and beat this seller and get the shares at the level we mentioned, if not better. And I think we would own a really good name in our portfolio, and we will be very proud shareholders. In order to do that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to send an email to all of you who participated to the webinar with an information sheet about the company that more or less is the information from which the presentation was based. I will put once again the link where you can go and show your soft commitment to the investment, and then by Monday morning we will count heads and we will go ahead and I will let you know if I am able to be the seller or not. And then until then, if there are no questions, I thank you all very much for participating to the webinar. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Cheers, folks.
Bye.
Don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.